Our next honoree is Richard DioGuardi, who will be escorted by Post 112 Vice Commander Fiscal de Sisto. Next, I would like to introduce our honoree, Richard DioGuardi. And I'd like to read just a brief bio on Dick. Dick was born in the Arthur Avenue section of the Bronx, and his family later moved to White Plains. He was drafted and served honorably in the United States Army during the Vietnam era. Upon returning from military service, Dick pursued a degree in accounting from Pace College. He became a CPA in 1972 and later started his own certified public accounting firm. Dick has been married for 44 years to his childhood sweetheart, Louise Oliveri, and they have 3 children and 3 grandchildren. Not great, I'm sorry. Dick has served on the advisory board of St. Martin of Tours School, the board of the YMCA of Central and Northern Westchester, was president of the Mount Pleasant Italian American Association, and is a vice commander and treasurer of the Gilbert Rao American Legion Post. Currently, he serves as the finance chairman for the Captain Oliver C. Chase Jr. American Legion Post 274 in Peekskill. And Dick has graciously offered his financial expertise in assisting a number of veterans organizations when they have problems with financial matters. Each year, Dick volunteers when our post conducts our annual POW MIA parade at the Montrose VA Hospital, and Dick acts as chauffeur sometimes and drives our POWs around. Right, in Joe's car. All right. In this past May, Dick was one of the sponsors of our Armed Forces Day concert at the Westchester County Center, which many of the people in this room have attended. And we're very honored to have Dick as a member of our American Legion Post 112. And for his service to our nation and his continued efforts on behalf of veterans and Medal of Honor recipients, we're proud to present this award to Dick DioGuardi. Joe, if you'd escort him up.
That's beautiful. Love it. Look at that. Huh? Nice. First of all, I want to thank Peter Fremafredo, Hawthorne Post 112, all of its members and officers. And I want to also recognize my post. I have John Donahue here and Bob also, John Brody. Peekskill Post, and also, I also want to give recognition. One of my tables, I have to point out, we have a coalition of veterans. We have one from every armed services at my table. We have 1 Marine, we have 1 Navy, we have 2 Air Force and 1 Army. Stand up, guys, veterans. Stephen Garcia served a tour in Afghanistan, 1 tour in Afghanistan. Thank you, Stephen. And lastly, I want to recognize my grandson, Devin Sabatino. Stand up. A Navy cadet. From North Carolina, he spent 2 weeks at the Great Lakes facility in Chicago, and he successfully came out and won a couple of ribbons. He couldn't get them yet, but they will be, pretty soon he'll be receiving them. Devin, I'm very proud of you. Thank you. And thank you very much.
As I had mentioned earlier, we don't have a Medal of Honor recipient in attendance at our dinner tonight. And normally, we recognize our Medal of Honor guest at this time. However, since we cannot honor any one specific individual tonight, The committee thought that it would be appropriate to recognize the two most recent Medal of Honor recipients, Private Henry Johnson and Sergeant William Sheeman. Their medals were awarded on June 2nd, 2015 at the White House. And you can read their citations for bravery, which are provided on your table. Both of these gentlemen served in World War I, and both were long forgotten, except for a few individuals who continue to fight on their behalf to bring them the honor they so justly deserved. And on June 2nd, they both finally received proper recognition for their heroism. It's hard to believe it took over 100 years for them to get those medals. If you read their citations, which we put on the tables, you'll have to agree that they really deserve the award. Again, they wouldn't have gotten it without the determination, I guess you could say, of a handful of people who continued to fight, even after they were gone, but to fight for what they justly deserved. And we're very fortunate tonight to have one of those people who fought the fight with us. He's a former congressman, United States congressman, and was instrumental in getting the medal for Private Johnson. So I would like to ask former Congressman Joe DioGuardi, escorted by Pete, to please come forward and give us a little background on what was done.
Now, I became a congressman in January 1985. I won the election in November of 1984. Everybody was very surprised because I was in a district that no Republican ever ran in and no Republican ever served in until parties don't mean that much to me, so I don't want to say that except for one thing. I ended up in a district that gave me the most African Americans, black Americans, of any Republican in America. Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, Yonkers. In those days, they were all in Westhcester. Now they're in a congressional district, a lot of it in the Bronx. They changed those lines. Now, why is that important? 1986, Dr. Ramsey visits me. You'll see his picture right here. And by the way, I have a foundation, Truth in Government, and I raised the money from my friends, and this is a temporary plaque. We just had this dedication in Mount Vernon with the mayor of Mount Vernon. Why? Because this expert, he was an historian, Dr. Ramsey, came into my office and said, Joe, I didn't vote for you, but you're my congressman. And he told me a story that was so unbelievable, and it went like this. He says, Joe, did you know that in World War I and World War II, 1,550,000 African Americans, black Americans, served our country? And not one got our country's highest military honor, although a couple of hundred were recommended. I said, Dr. Ramsey, Leroy, I'm a CPA. Those numbers don't add up. What's going on here? In my mind, I was thinking of racism. But then he said, did you know, Joe, that there was segregation in World War I and World War II? I says, no, I'm a poor kid from the Bronx. We moved to Westhcester when I was 15. I got a pretty good education, and no one ever told me we had segregation in those wars. I said, Leroy, you're telling me this is racism. Well, we don't like to call it that. I said, if you want me to get involved in this, I'm going to think straight and talk straight. That's the way I was raised. If it's racism, it's got to be called as such, and I'll join with you and see what we can do. Well, I then went to the head of the Black Congressional Caucus, Mickey Leland, told him about the story, and I said, I'm now going to take this thing on. I know it's not going to be easy, but I got good connections now in the White House because President Reagan didn't know he had 46 elected. I got elected on election day. No poll ever said I would win. And they literally threw a party for me. I was number 46. He thought he had number 45. So I used that kind of connection to call his chief of staff, tell him about this. And they then set up a meeting with me and the Secretary of Defense. Now, take this book home with you, and you'll see what I did over 28 years. The persistence, kicking the door down when the military absolutely refused to reconsider it. And believe me, you'll see me telling the Secretary of Defense, change that decision. or else I'm going to do something no one's ever done. I'm going to get 218 signatures in the House, and I don't need the military. The medal can then be given by the president, and I've been assured that if I did that, the president would do it. When I got to 165 signatures, I got a call from Carlucci, the Secretary of Defense. And he said, you know, you're making a lot of trouble here. They don't want to go back to World War I. No black American ever got it in World War I or World War II. I says, yeah, but this is justice. What did Martin Luther King say? You know, justice delayed is justice denied. And again, he said, if there is injustice anywhere, then justice is threatened everywhere. And justice knows no color. If you ever see the statue of justice, blindfolded, right, with a scale, right, whether you're Italian or black or Jewish, when it comes to basic justice, it has to be served in a way that is correct. That's what America stands for. So I decided to make this, and my staff was going crazy. They says, Joe, you're not going to get any votes. You're in a vulnerable district. You're not going to last more than one term. This is not what you should be doing. You're a CPA. Talk about the budget. I said, I'm going to do that too. But I'm going to do this as well, and one of you is going to do the research to make me an expert on this. And that happened. So here it is, 1991. Now, Carlucci, we go to his office, and he said, Joe, you seem to be a reasonable guy. Why do you think that the guy that you picked, Sergeant Henry Johnson, deserves it more than the others that weren't picked? Maybe we should do a study and look at everyone who got the second highest award in World War I and World War II that was a black American to see if there were others who deserved it just as much or maybe more. Now, what am I going to say? I said, that seems reasonable to me. How long is that going to take, Mr. Secretary? Well, that's going to take probably a couple of years. It took 8 years. 8 years. Now, I'm out of Congress, and they thought, because I only served 2 terms, I was in a very tough district. You remember what happened in 1988? Dukakis won New York. He didn't win his own Massachusetts. He won New York, and I lose the way I won by just a couple of thousand votes. In any case, I said, now I'm out. They thought they got rid of me. But this I had now in my blood. And I said, now I started giving speeches, writing articles. You'll see in this book my editorials in the Times, because when they did the study, believe it or not, they found a case, a Corporal Freddie Stowers, you'll see it in the back of this little book that I prepared, where the file didn't have denied on it. In other words, no one took action. That meant that the statute of limitations, 5-year statute, didn't have to be opened. I get a call from the White House, 1991, George H.W. Bush. Could you come down? We're going to give the medal to his 2 aunts. We found them in South Carolina. They're 93 and 95. So I went down there, and I have that videotape, and I was kind of honored by the president for doing it. Well, this happened again on June 2nd. I was invited by Obama after this. Now, why did it happen on June 2nd? No one ever thought this could be happening. Well, I kind of pulled a rabbit out of a hat, because 8 years ago, or almost 6 years ago, when Obama was elected the first time, I said, you know what? Now we got a chance with Henry Johnson. We have an African-American president. So I then went to Senator Schumer, who helped me a lot on everything I do. I said, I've got boxes of files. If you can assign a staff person to this like I did, I think we can come up with a much better case than was made years ago for Henry Johnson and do this. And he says, Joe, I was in the House, and I was one of those 165 signatures. Let's do it. Well, it took him 4 or 5 years to come up with 2 files. I should have brought them this thick, redoing the case, and that was 2011. And just now, a month ago, I was in the White House, and we got the medal. So that shows persistence. Maybe you got to do that in life with important things. So now, bottom line, I'll give it to you like a CPA. We have 9 medals. The one from 1991 and the one now with Henry Johnson. So that's 2 from World War I. And the study gave us 7 from World War II. So we're up to 9. But I'm not quitting. It's not over. Because there's another guy that I went after back in 1986 to get the head of the Black Caucus, Mickey Leland, to join me. He says, Joe, I have one in my district, Seaman Dory Miller. World War II. They have a battleship named after him. They gave him a stamp. They gave him the second highest award. They refused to give him the Medal of Honor. So the job is not finished. And if you heard his story, you wouldn't believe it. I'm not going to give it to you tonight, but you'll read it. It's in this little book. So with that, I'm pleased to be here, especially my brother. He has done so much for me. I don't think I would have been elected as a congressman if it weren't for my brother and sister. They dropped everything. It became a family enterprise, let me tell you. And look at this picture right here, and that's the last thing I'm going to say. That is the 369th Black Division, New York, in a parade on Fifth Avenue, 1918, when they came back. They all got the Medal of Honor, Croix de Guerre, in France. They came here, were refused everything, and Henry Johnson, the one that we saved, it brought tears to my eyes. 10 years later, they found him homeless, penniless. He died on the streets of Washington looking for a pension. So now we gave him his reward. Hey, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Joe.